Hi, everyone. Okay, hopefully you can see me and you can see our panelists today. Thank you for joining us and for Caregiver Burnout. So my name is Beth Cohen-King and I'm the Marketing Director at Margolis Bloom. I am pleased to introduce our guest today. So we have Tammy Pozerycki. She's owner of Alternatives in Alzheimer's Care. And I'm just going to read a little bit of her bio here. The mission of Alternatives in Alzheimer's Care is to improve the quality of life for people with dementia by educating, demonstrating, and inspiring compassionate and competent care partners. So Tammy is an established thought leader in dementia care with 25 years of experience working with people living with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia, their families, and healthcare professionals. And Heather Hersee, so of Heather Hersee Care Management. So what they do is they offer a broad range of services to older adults and their families, comprehensive care management, advocacy, consultation, and planning for adults in their 60s and 70s. So their commitment is to help older adults and their families make informed decisions about healthcare, housing, and other life choices, to address psychosocial challenges with sensitivity and compassion, and to empower older adults by encouraging them to participate in the decision-making that impacts their lives. So welcome to both of you. And our very own Sarah Hartline, so she's a senior associate at Margolis Bloom, and she represents clients in estate planning, including long-term care and special needs planning. She also represents clients in mass health applications and appeals, guardianships, conservatorships, probate administration, and related litigation. It's a mouthful. So welcome to all of you. I'm sure this is, I'm positive actually this is going to be informative and a useful conversation for everyone, as caregiver burnout is very real, especially during this last year. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Please feel free to use the question panel that you'll see in the control panel on the right side of your screen. We will incorporate those into the discussion, and if they don't fit in towards the discussion, we'll address them afterwards. And then additionally, you'll see further on down, right before the chat, there's a handouts section, and you'll see it says 1 out of 5. So there is a very comprehensive resource package of all the resources that you could possibly need, I think, so that Heather put together, including all of our panelists' contact information. So please feel free to download that. And then also we are going to be recording, so if you have to jump off, totally get it. We're going to have a recording. You'll have that available within the next week, along with I will also include the handout if for some reason you're not able to pull it from the GoToWebinar. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Sarah, and I'm going to turn off my video for a little bit, and I'll jump back on later.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you. Well, I'm very excited to have the panelists here today. This is an issue that that I see in my personal life and lives of my friends who are struggling. I have 2 young children myself. I have aging parents. I see the same happening with my friends, and then I also see this happening and affecting so many of my clients. Particularly with the pandemic, with everything that's happened over the last year, people are just feeling spread so thin, and just really looking for help, for support, and also just I thought that this would just be a great way for people to understand what is caregiver burnout, and what does it look like. So I'm going to start, I think, by just asking some questions. I'll start with you, Tammy, just asking, what is caregiver burnout, and what are the risk factors?
Sure. So caregiver burnout it can affect anyone professionally and personally who are caring for a loved one. And the experience of that person is just exactly what you said, just overwhelmed, overburdened, tired, exhausted, fatigued, loss of energy, becoming quite distant. It actually can mimic depression and anxiety. And then you may, in fact, even start to develop secondary illnesses, which could be psychosomatic, or true illnesses because now your immune system is actually impacted by this. And people who are at risk really are those people in that sandwich generation where, you're not just caregiving for your children, you're also caregiving for your parent or older relative. And I think that is the biggest challenge for people right now and the pandemic has just emphasized it, has just expanded it. This is definitely something that has come to the forefront of everybody's mind because everybody's experiencing it. I think caregivers partially feel isolated. They don't have enough support. They don't feel that they have enough support. And the pandemic just compounded that. So what are the risk factors? Certainly pressures of time. How many of us say there's not enough hours in the day, right? Not having that communication or support, whether it's loved ones, friends, family, or what Heather will speak about, what are the supports, right? Sort of everything's unmanageable or it feels unmanageable, one or the other, because you're overloaded. So one more thing is going to just break the limit to add to your plate. And you're just sort of over involved. There's nothing about self-care that's in your life. You're not nurturing yourself. Individually, you're not, you may be attending to your older adult parents and you're in charge of doctor appointments. You're in charge of getting them groceries. You're in charge of all the stuff that your priorities of your own health and well-being are just on the back burner. So you literally feel like you're working harder, but that you're accomplishing less.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that was I was going to say in terms of so I can certainly relate to a lot of that, yeah, even personally, where it seems like yes, even the 10 minutes per shower, it seems like is just I just can't do that today. Not having just those 10 minutes. What does that feeling of feeling stressed out, being burnt out, what does that do to you as a caregiver?
So this is really important to be aware of because I feel like knowledge is power. So the more you learn about things in your life that affect your health, that affect your well-being, the more empowered you are to really say, I have to do something about this. And stress does kill. It absolutely leads to secondary illness. What is stressed out? I think everybody has their own definition of what is stressed out, right? It may be that you're anxious, you're depressed, you're losing sleep. You might be overeating or undereating, smoking, drinking alcohol. These are all vices and things we do because we're just stressed out. How else do we release that? And because of all the commitments, now you have reduced physical activity where we know that exercise is actually good for us. Sleep disturbance, sleep is so impactful on a person, and the lack of sleep can do a lot of damage. And we know caregivers lack sleep. So what does it do to your brain? It actually shrinks the prefrontal cortex. So our attention, our concentration, our memory, our planning, our thinking, all of that is affected. Now, there's a piece of the brain that's very interesting, and I know this because as a dementia specialist, we talk a lot about the amygdala. That's a little piece in your brain that's really the responses of our emotions. And it's sort of that fight or flight. And what stress does is actually enlarge it. So it's a beautiful thing for a person with dementia because it's the least affected and they can continue to have emotion. But for a person who's under a lot of stress, guess what that does? It actually makes us more susceptible to stress. And then it negatively affects all kinds of our daily functioning. It can, unfortunately, chronic stress can rewire our brains. and it produces cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and cortisol isn't good for us. It's our way of our brain reacting to stress. But everything that I listed, learning, attention, memory, it increases blood pressure, cholesterol. It can lead to heart disease. I already mentioned immune system and your overall lifespan. So it's very, very important to really start to detect what it's doing to you as a caregiver.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. And so in terms of the, you talk about stress, what are the different forms of stress? How, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So what makes stress worse for some people and not for another? We all have our threshold of how much stress we can hold. It really depends upon whether or not the stress is unpredictable, a stress that has no end point, and also how much support you have. Are you lacking stress? So there's 3 types of stress. One is a good stress. And actually, we actually do well with some stress in our lives. It's what pushes us. It's what makes us to rise to the challenge and actually have the experience of some negative and positive outcomes that actually build some sort of resiliency. And then tolerable stress, it's sort of our ability where we don't have the control over the stress. And that is definitely, it allows for some growth, but tolerable in the sense of if it is something like if I'm planning to do a presentation, I get that stress just initially, but it's over at some point. So that stress is going to move on. With chronic stress, so say I have financial stress and I can't pay my bills and I need to make more money. That's an ongoing, you don't know when it's going to end kind of stress. So that's the difference of what it does to your levels of stress and how it affects your brain. So we know that toxic stress is certainly when that lingers. It's a chronic stress. And if you don't have good resiliency and have good coping mechanisms and have a village of support, that's when it starts to really reduce your quality of life. So all stuff very important.
Right, definitely. And so, so I'll sort of move over to Heather because, Tammy has just spoken a lot about stress and wow, I'm surprised just even hearing about some of the severe effects that it can have. And certainly, I talk to people who I feel like have just been in that constant state of stress where there just seems like there's no end. And so with that in mind, obviously we're going to, try to get away from that if you can. So Heather, why don't you tell me a little bit about a concept that I've heard you talk about, the concept or the myth of self-reliance.
Well, yes, the myth of self-reliance is I've got this. I can do it all. I'm the only one who can do it. Mom would really rather have me help her. You're far away. Oh, I know that Danny really doesn't want to get involved in this. And that one person, one caregiver can take care of another person all the time in addition to their other responsibilities in their life. And it's just really not realistic. I mean, we feel like we should be able to be super women or supermen, but we're not. We're human beings, and it's just really to you kind of have to talk yourself down and say, wait a minute, I can't do all of this. And I think the fortunate caregivers are the ones who realize that and begin to reach out for help. The community, the village of support that Tammy mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And really, before they get to that point of absolute burnout,
Right.
so that they're able to, put some constructive systems, measures in place, because once you're burned out, you just really, you can't think.
Right. Right. Yeah. You sort of get to a point where it's really hard to even turn it around.
Exactly.
It seems like. So I sort of, I think, one of the themes, talking with both of you, seems to be sort of that, as with many things, as with even with estate planning, sort of the sooner that you can sort of start to attack it, start to come up with the plan, the better, so that it doesn't sort of build up to that point of being really hard to turn things around. So tell me a little bit, how to prevent burnout. What are some sort of concrete or steps that people should be thinking about doing?
I think the one is not to give up the time you've allocated, the normal activities. I mean, maybe you have to curtail them a little bit, but to have that time for yourself, whether it's your reading time, definitely your sleeping and eating healthfully time, seeing friends, the things that nurture you. So, and that may mean if you're working, looking into family medical leave with your employer, or it may mean if you're able to, and you have a parent who maybe, or, somebody in your life an older adult who needs help, it may be hiring somebody for a little bit of time, or it may be asking another family member to pitch in. And it may be that you remain the caregiver, but there may be other areas where they can help you. Like, can they take over housekeeping, laundry, driving the kids to wherever they have to be, paying bills? Can they, if they're far away, can they maybe help pay for a caregiver if that's needed? If financial help is needed. Maybe they can do some research for you on, who can help, because when you're in the middle of it and you're running to take care of mom or dad or whoever, it's just all a lot. So I think it's like being able to ask for help and accepting that none of us are going to do this perfectly.
Right. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say it's an easy, well, it's not easy, but lots of helping hands is a website, and you can put you can basically make up a schedule of needs, like, meals or rides or whatever, or, laundry, and then people can get on, the people in your circle who you allow on can get on and offer to do certain things. That's been pretty effective for a lot of people. It's not the only answer, but yeah.
Right, and that's a great way of sort of just laying it out. A lot of the times I feel like, people say, oh, like they're willing to help, but then it's really hard to make that transition to actually asking for the help.
Right.
And to actually, you sort of, some sort of something nice that people say, but then you just feel like you still have to take it on, or you can't actually take them up on it. So this is a way of, like you said, on this website, sort of laying out the things and allowing people to actually, to sign up if they can help. And I find that, a lot of people are willing to, and they just don't know how.
Right.
So that's a way of very, laying it out, and making that easy. I do see, as I have mentioned to both of you before we started, I'm in a few caregiver support groups. And I know one of the sort of common themes that comes up is about the idea that it's really hard for a lot of us to delegate, to have somebody else do something, because of the idea that, we have a certain way of doing it and we like it being done a certain way. I actually was even this way with my two children who are now 2 and 3. It was like very hard for me to let my husband just take care of them for the day, because I was like, just, it's a little bit, you sort of get a little bit, possessive of things going, a certain way, or having certain schedules. So do you have any sort of tips or advice and sort of how to sort of let that go, and when you're bringing other people that maybe just are doing things differently?
I think it's really good to have written out just sort of an idea of the overall routine of the person who's being cared for, and something down so that the person is not repeating it over and over again, almost like a mini manual. And one more thing for the caretaker to do. So maybe not necessarily the caretaker, maybe a family member or somebody else could take that over, but so that people are all on the same page and the family member is repeating time and time again.
Right.
I think sometimes people need some respite, to get, maybe initially you're thinking, oh, I don't want to hire, or I don't want to leave mom or dad with full-time help. But maybe even starting slowly, whether it's a few hours a day or a day a week, to give the caretaker a break, and just to kind of, and it also helps the person who's being cared for kind of ease into it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I do think that part of it too is that once you do it, and then you realize that everything doesn't fall apart. It's sort of like get over that fear. And so, you do it, maybe like you said, you start with just doing it for a very short period of time and start doing it for longer periods of time. Then that person, like you said, they get some familiarity, yeah, you can sort of build up to that. One of the questions, and I'm interested in Tammy's thoughts on this as well, because I know, Tammy has that's the specialty in terms of dementia. What advice would you have in terms of when the person that actually is being cared for says, no, I don't want anybody else coming in. Nope, I just want you doing everything. You're my daughter, and you're the only person that I want involved. So either of you can start.
Go ahead, Heather.
Well, that's a tough discussion in families. It happens a lot. I mean, so sometimes somebody else outside of the family, I have a little bit more success with that, than the daughter would necessarily, but not always. It really, really varies. And I think also getting somebody else to say, well, Mom, this isn't just for you, this is for me as well. And, I want to be able to continue to help you and take care of you, but if I'm not taking care of myself, not so great. And sometimes you just have to keep coming back to it, because it doesn't happen quickly enough. I mean, it's, usually, you're getting to the brittle point, and, when you're beginning to think about, okay, I really need some support in here. And having perhaps other family members, who are not the direct caretaker, talk as well. And kind of slowly introduce and reintroduce the topic, and then slowly bringing somebody in, whether it's another family member, and just, and it's amazing because, people will be resistant, but if it's the right match, sometimes, it can really, it does help. But
yeah, great. Tammy, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, one is just to acknowledge the fact that there is not a single older adult that likes to be told what the best plan of care is for their parent. From their kids. They don't want to hear you. So it is really best to have professional involvement if you're stuck, if you can't get the buy-in. This is part of what I do, is to help them, massage them, coach them into how to have this happen, because especially if the person is in a stage where they still are holding on to that control and that functional independence, that they don't need help. Part of our grieving process is denial, and we don't want to admit that we need help. So I agree with Heather on that, to bring in a professional to help with that. The other thing is, when I've coached with people, family members caring for an adult with dementia, there are other reasons why we need to have this person come in other than taking care and being a companion to you. They look at it as babysitting, and I don't need a babysitter. Well, I need my house clean, so I'm going to have someone come in and help with the housekeeping, and, or I have actually created jobs where, Mom, or for the child to say, Mom, you are at home, but this is your talent, and my friend needs your help. And so you formulate friendships with these people. And I think it's important. One bit of advice is that we as caregivers think, I'm going to go with what Heather said, and I'm going to call a home care company, and I'm going to get a care partner in, because I I can't do the bathing and the grooming, but I'm going to get someone in to help mom shower. And they expect, well, I'm going to have it twice, 2 showers a week, an hour. So I just need 2 hours a week. It doesn't work like that. You have to really groom the person, warm the person up, build trust, build rapport. It's a process. So starting now is best. I used to run a day program, and people would be afraid to commit. And it's like, just try a little bit at a time. It's like if you're a mother, you have the experience of bringing your child to daycare and what that first day was like. The anxiety builds. They can't take care of my child the way I can. And sometimes people feel that way about their parents. So I think it has a great recommendations.
Yeah.
I just
Support,
wanted
find the support, like whether it's a support group or somebody else, is in a similar situation to whom you can talk, so that you're not just, have it all bottled up in yourself.
I just wanted to jump in. There's a not really a question, but a comment here. Spouses don't like to be told what to do either, so they may be willing to have someone help because they want to help their spouse. So we thought you could elaborate on that a little too.
Do you want to elaborate, Heather?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. So, it's hard. I mean, it really impacts the whole household, when, life has changed and all of a sudden, the dynamic is this energy, there's more energy going towards the person who needs to be taken care of, and the caretaker's getting more brittle, and it's a tough dynamic.
I think, what I like to teach people is to change verbiage. Like, we call this caregiving, right? We call ourselves caregivers. Let's try to change it to care partner. And then that way we create a partnership in which the person feels like you're doing things with them. They're part of it. They're not being given care. And I think what happens a lot, and this happens all the time with people with dementia, is they lose their sense of purpose. There's nothing worse for an older individual to lose their sense of purpose. And so that's where we have to be creative and find out, what can this person be helpful doing and achieving and feel successful for their day. And that's part of our responsibility to do that as a care partner.
Yeah, that's great, and that's a very good point. That you don't want to, they don't want to feel like they're being cared for as much as sort of having this extra person coming in, and that's going to help them maybe do things that they want to do that they aren't able to do, and maybe they have a passion for art or something else, and this can be a way of somebody coming in and helping with that, as opposed to just sort of taking care of them or babysitting them, as you say. Nobody really wants to have that feeling. So it's more of an opportunity to have somebody else come in to help and have. I like that language of the partner. And you touched on one of the things I just wanted to go back to is in terms of support groups. So, in-person support groups, obviously there haven't been a lot of those because of the pandemic. But can either of you touch a little bit upon the types of support groups that are out there, for both the, children who are in that caregiver role or even spouses? I find that it's, often spouses are just undergoing a lot of stress and need a place to sort of vent, and what would be sort of the first steps that somebody in that position should go? I don't know if maybe it's on the resources in terms of where they should go for that type of virtual support, and any thoughts on that type of support. I'll start with you, Heather. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yes. There's AARP has a pretty comprehensive, and they are on. There is a link on the in the chat on the resource list, and they have, caretaker support. They have different guides. They have, guidelines to things you should look at legally, information on, online community things in terms of sharing about certain problems that are going on. The Alzheimer's Association has support groups for caregivers. I think, Tammy, I think they were actually, the Alzheimer's Association also had volunteers who were available on a very limited basis to work with people with Alzheimer's one-on-one. So I think those are two really good places to start.
I would definitely consider contacting your senior center. But the
Yes.
other thing that we often miss is Facebook, because Facebook, if you're a part of Facebook, they have a support group for everything. And all you have to do is search for that group. And even in person, even virtual, whatever it is that you're going to investigate and attend, if you don't feel like you're a good match with that group, move on. Don't stay with it. Just keep moving on till you find that group and those people who you can really rely on for the support.
And I think, Irene, it's sadly so many people are going through this that really, there are a lot of groups out there, even if you even check with, sort of your local, I'm in Arlington, you check with these sort of local Arlington groups and post, is there a group like this nearby, who you'll find you'll get like 50 different responses of people that, or you'll get all these responses of people saying, oh, I really want that too. I'm interested in that. Maybe we should start a group. You'll find that I don't think that you'll have trouble finding other people that are in that situation. And I think I totally agree that Facebook can be a great resource for that in terms of connecting people. Beth, did you have something to add?
Yeah, this is how you know that there's a question coming. My picture jumped up. So someone said this has been great so far. So you mentioned the importance of caregivers to get more sleep. Might you have specific suggestions on how they can accomplish this goal?
I don't mind answering that, but I didn't know if you had anything, Heather. So, I mean, here's the thing. It depends on who you're caring for and what the demands are. Because again, we have to be creative with our schedule. I remember having little ones, and guess when I slept? When they slept, and the housework didn't get done. There's a lot of there's apps on YouTube. It depends on the sleep difficulty too. Is it time, or is it your quality and you can't get to sleep because your head's spinning? Right. There's differences in getting a good quality of sleep, and gosh, I could do a whole education process on that. But yeah, it's definitely about creativity and what the issue is and dealing with the issue of why you can't get sleep. So Heather, would you add anything to that?
Well, so I mean, if it is an issue of that your head is just spinning at the end of the day and you can't fall asleep, like there's an app, Calm. I have it on my cell phone, that has some relaxing, you can there's the free part of it, but there's the other, and there are lots of things like that. I like what you said, Tammy, about, just being more creative and napping when your kids do, or again, getting somebody else in to help you.
Right. I know of a lot of
during the day, or
yeah, because people, I mean, if they're caring for people who are older, may have cognitive impairment. I mean, I know spouses that I've recommended that they sleep in a different room, or that they put a monitor, or they get someone to come in. I mean, because you have to get sleep. It's like think of it as the gas tank for the car. If you're running on empty, it's not going to run. Like the airplane one where the oxygen mask comes down, they always say you put it on first, then put it on your loved one. All these analogies, they're true. You can't run without your basic needs of food, drink, and sleep and oxygen.
Yeah,
So
definitely. My two, I usually, when I'm struggling to get the time for sleep, or because you know, in the part about if it's just a time thing, like you don't have time because you're taking care of your parents and you're taking care of your kids. I usually, it's for me, it's either, I need to outsource more things. So I need to get more, more help, whether it's whether it's with your family members or with yourself. What can I outsource? And then also lowering my standards. So like you said, it's okay if my it's okay if
Excellent
my house,
advice.
yeah,
Excellent.
maybe I'm just going to go to sleep with the house being a mess. So those personally for me, that's usually I try to do one of the two. But yeah, but that's great. Did you have another question, Beth?
So I just had a comment in here. Oh, yeah, there's a few other things here. A comment from someone, so I'll just read it, and maybe I'm sure you can support this and probably have other people who are dealing with things similarly. So I'm a care partner for my husband who had a stroke. I was exhausted, depleted, and on the road to getting sick, the very real possibility Tammy cited earlier in the presentation. At a routine visit with my PCP, he told me that I had to restructure my life or that I'd not be able to care for my husband because I'd be ill. He cited data showing that caregivers often decline faster than the party receiving care. He also told me that my goal should be to thrive, not just survive. I think we all should have that.
I like that PCP.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
that meant a lot more time, not only sleeping, but doing things that I enjoy. And then let me just, so this, and actually the same person commented on some sleep parts too. So it said my doctor told me to set sleep goals and write them down, i.e. get 8 hours of sleep 3 nights a week, 7.5 hours 3 nights, and 8.5 hours 1 night per week. And I can just add into, I mean, from the Calm app is great. I use that. And then also there's something called Yoga Nidra, and you can just search it on YouTube, and it's like a breathing meditation app that helps you fall asleep. So I could actually, I'll post it in the chat. And
Great.
There's like, all these things are that we're talking about is about building resilience. And in order to build resilience, we have to do those things, Beth, like Beth is saying, and Heather's saying, and maybe it's not watching TV. Maybe it's winding down with a nice cup of chamomile tea and a little melatonin, some reading. There's so much that goes into preparing yourself for good sleep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And keeping that balance in your life where you still have, and it's hard, you still have things that sustain you, eating properly, talking to other people so that you feel like you're not in this all alone, and realizing that there are other people who can help you, whether it's
Right.
family or people you hire. And it's really largely a matter of asking, not always. I mean, every family is different, and maybe you'll be told to go jump in a lake, but maybe not. And
Right.
there are a lot of creative ways to, just one thought came, I know of families where somebody will come visit from out of state for a week or two to spell the care, the people who are boots on the ground here with the,
Mhm.
their older family member, which is a really nice thing because then it gives people a bit of a break.
Right. Well, yeah, I was actually, that's sort of one of the questions I was going to ask in terms of how, another thing that I see come up is very common, both personally and with my clients. One child is the local child, then the other, sibling is out in California, and sort of how can that sibling that's out of state be a support to the local sibling. I think that's a great that's a great suggestion, just because of the idea of them coming in and sort of taking over for a week, just because of the idea that not only does it give the local person sort of a week off, but also kind of like gives them an idea of what that local person is going through. So you sort of like can't really wrap your head around it until you're actually, being that person for a week and stepping into their shoes, and then realize, oh wow, like this, maybe as an example, we really do need some help, more care coming in, or wow, this is really draining and stressful. What can I do to support? Yeah, and sort of, even if it is, encouraging the person to get more help and to hire, whether it's a care manager. And before, I know we're running out of time because there's so much discussion, I would love to hear, sort of related to the care manager, Heather, Tammy, if you can each take, maybe 2 minutes, or just a little bit about what you do, what your role is, and how you play into this conversation.
Okay.
Tammy, I'll start with you. Do you want to just kind of quickly talk about that?
Absolutely. So what I do now is a lot of different things. Some is training staff professionally, healthcare professionals, training first responders. So I'm a dementia specialist. So what does that mean? That means I know my stuff, I have my experience behind me, and I love to work with people who just need that extra education. I find that caregivers, care partners, just don't have, they're not equipped with what they need to know. And what they need to know is how to better communicate, how to structure their day, how to get help, what are the supports out there. I even sometimes get hired by aging life care professionals, elder law attorneys, family, home care, because there's a struggle there. And the struggle is around really setting up that support and for the person with dementia. And that individual who spoke about their spouse and how they won't be around if they don't change, their way. There is a statistic out there that puts people, and I've experienced it in 25 years, too many care partners who predeceased their loved one living with dementia in particular, or other heavy duty caretaking obligations. So my name of the company is up there, and if I don't think I can help you, I'm a good resource to lead you to who can. And Heather can now tell you what she does, and we're good referral sources for each other, I think.
Great.
So I work with, families and their older adult members, and I get calls from burnt out caretakers saying, it's been the pandemic, we let the housekeeper go, my husband has dementia, and just kind of go in and see assess the situation and see what help we can get in for that person, and how is this physician, who just retired 2 years ago, who now has dementia, going to accept that help. So that's one thing. I take I follow people's medical care very often, when their kids can't do it. So I go to their medical appointments and I communicate back to the family what's going on, to if they live in assisted living or skilled nursing, here's the situation, this is what the doctor said, to the caretakers. I just sort of help families who are, very often they come to me when they're in a bit of an emergency or a hot spot. And I just try to help them get systems set up, to be part of a team so that they can live their lives and their older adult family members can live their lives. And there's some, you just can't do it all. So I jump in all the time, I never know exactly what I'm going to be doing, but it's an interesting line of work. So I too, I'm Heather Hersee, Care Management. I am happy to take a call from people and, point you in what I think is the right direction, or make some suggestions, for help, because it is just,
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Exactly.
It's a lot, and it's sometimes, but I can definitely see how sometimes it's a lot and you just don't even know where to start. So
Exactly.
It's sort of like, there's all this, I know that I don't have time, I know I need help, but I just don't know how I would get, how do I fit that in? And
Yeah.
So that's why I think, care managers are great. I refer my clients to them to say, look, this is, like, don't worry if you don't even know exactly what you're asking for. Just, sort of starting the process, getting the wheels, turning, can be great. And like I said, like, so many people are going through this, that there are these other, actually just quick example would just even, I had somebody who the care manager, there's these great like technology, like they got this phone for the house that the phone had like limits on because they were having a problem with scammers and marketers. And they got this great phone that now is just taking care of the problem. It's like the problem is gone all of a sudden. And so yeah, and they just wouldn't know about that. So just care managers are great. You know, she said, like once that she got that recommendation for that phone, she said it was all worth it. Just, you know, for making that call. So yeah, so I think, you know, pointing people in the right direction, giving them tools, giving them resources is great. And so thank you both so much for being here, for talking. Beth is back on, so I think that means we're wrapping up.
I was muted. I should know that by now, right? You're muted. That's probably the saying from 2020. So yes, we are out of time, but everybody, you do have everyone's contact information, and mine is bck@margolis.com. So if you want to follow up with anything technical, I can't answer the professional questions, but I can help with disseminating information. So don't forget the handout if you want to grab that from your computer. Any other questions that we get in right now, I'll pass along and make sure that we have someone answer them for you. And I will have the recording available. And thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to our panelists.
Thank you. It was nice to be here.
Yes, no, and I hope for those local in Massachusetts, I hope you get out to enjoy the gorgeous spring weather today. So thank you so much to everyone.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you,
Thanks so
everybody.
much.